Hello, AP students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 6, Learning. And today we're going to talk a little bit about punishment and kind of sum up the critiques, if you want to call that, on classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So to get started, you're going to want to have your packet handy and follow along. We talked a little bit about punishment in one of our previous classes. I just want to kind of go back and kind of revisit this. Anytime we talk about a punishment, it's something that is aversive, something that's going to keep somebody from repeating a behavior that was perhaps not what you wanted or inappropriate, and keep that from ever happening again. And opposite of punishment is something called reinforcement, this idea that you're going to try to get people to do something repeatedly, perhaps maybe repeatedly, that is good. So there are two forms of punishment. Positive punishment, which is adding some kind of aversive stimulus. So the example I have here is like touching a hot plate, and if you get burnt, you're going to have maybe a blister or something like that, perhaps on your hand. Because of that, you're probably not going to be touching anything hot in the near future. There is also omission training, sometimes known as negative punishment, where you're taking something away. So if your parents take away your car keys or your cell phone, that is an example of negative punishment. All right? So let's talk a little bit about punishment versus negative reinforcement. So punishment and also negative reinforcement both involve some kind of unpleasant stimulus, but usually the opposite effect on behavior. Punishment is used to decrease the behavior. So if I don't want that happening again, if you go back to the example of touching the hot plate, if I keep getting burnt, I'm less likely to touch something that is hot, or I'm going to be thinking twice. Okay? Negative reinforcement, we want the behavior to reoccur, but we're going to be taking something away. You know, anytime we talk about positive, we add, but anytime we talk about negative, we're removing something to get that behavior to repeat itself. Okay? Positive reinforcement and positive punishment always involve adding something, adding some kind of stimulus. So if I'm adding praise to get you to do something again and again, that would be an example of positive reinforcement. If I am scolding you, or perhaps maybe, you know, if you've ever been spanked, we're adding that aversiveness to keep you from repeating the behavior. Okay, there are some problems with punishment, and I kind of want to address those. In our society, here at least in the United States, we do rely very heavily on punishment. Punishment produces an immediate change in behavior, which is reinforced for the most part by the punisher. And the major reason why we use punishment is because it is already so widespread. It goes back. Your parents probably could talk about some of the ways that they were punished as children, and probably your grandparents too. Punishers may feel good about delivering a punishment, and hence they might be sensing that they are settling a score or getting even for making a person pay for that. You know, this whole idea that revenge is sweet, and that might be on the verge of getting kind of dangerous. So, why is punishment so difficult to use effectively? The power of punishment to suppress behavior usually disappears when the threat of the punishment is removed. Punishment also triggers an escape or an aggression, and you might get into this whole notion of fight or flight. Some people, when they're punished, they get very defensive and they're ready to fight back. Others might run from it. Punishment also makes the learner apprehensive, which inhibits learning new and better responses. Punishment is often applied unequally, and this is where we have some big issues here. Even though it might violate the standards of what is fair and equal treatment, when we talk about it perhaps maybe in a school setting, boys typically are punished more than girls are. Not to say that girls don't do things that are naughty, but boys seem to be the ones taking the brunt of the punishment for that. Punishment also should meet some of the following conditions if it's going to be used. It needs to be swift. It should be consistently administered, meaning that if the person violates a certain behavior standard, that you're always going to follow that with the punishment every single time. Punishment needs to be limited in duration, and it probably should meet the needs of the age of the individual. The intensity also needs to be limited. It shouldn't necessarily be incredibly rough and intense in that regard. The punishment also needs to fit, as they would say, the crime. So if it was a minor deal, it should be probably a minor punishment. Punishment should also clearly target the behavior that's in question. So if the behavior obviously was something that was somewhat minor, then the punishment needs to be reflective of that. The punishment should also be limited to the situation in which the response occurred. Punishment should not give mixed messages to the punished person, such as they're not permitted to hit others, but yet you hit them. Yeah, that's not good. And the most effective punishment, as we've mentioned before in class, is usually omission training. Negative reinforcement or negative punishment specifically, maybe this needs to be changed here, where a person loses their privileges. So if an individual, breaks curfew, then perhaps maybe you lose the opportunity to use your car for travel. All right, let's talk a little bit about kind of the comparison of operant and classical conditioning. Operant and classical conditioning differ in the sequences of stimulus and response. Classically conditioned behavior is largely a response to past stimulation, whereas operant conditioning is typically looking at future reinforcement. The rewards given in operant conditioning can be especially effective in encouraging new behaviors. Classical conditioning, on the other hand, emphasizes eliciting the same response to a new stimuli, such as the salivating to the bell in Pavlov's experiments. You might also note that the extension between operant and classical conditioning, they differ slightly in the two forms of learning. In classical conditioning, it requires withholding the unconditioned stimulus, whereas in operant conditioning, it is the control of the responder, and as far as how you're going to respond to the rewards or the punishment. Psych in your own life, modifying operant behavior. When we talk about positive reinforcement, that's a good bet, especially if you want to find some desirable behavior that you want to reinforce before the unwanted behavior occurs, hence the Premack principle, which we talked a little bit about the other day. Punishment may be tempting, but it's always chancy. In addition, it usually has a bad effect on the relationship between the punisher and the person being punished. Negative reinforcement has the same drawbacks as punishment because it typically involves some kind of unpleasant stimulation. Parents may try to use negative reinforcement as a means of encouraging unlikely behaviors such as doing homework, taking out the garbage, maybe feeding the dog. The only time negative reinforcement really works well is when the aversion conditions were imposed naturally or impersonally. And then finally, extinction is a guaranteed solution that only if you control all of the reinforcers. Extinction simply means not giving into a temper tantrum and not letting him or her have what they want. Simply allows the tantrum to perhaps burn itself out. All right, thank you very much.